So, what happens if a cyberboard and a Game Boy gets together and has a baby? Well, you'll end up with this, the RGB65. Equal parts flash and nostalgia, the RGB65 is one of the most eye-catching keyboards of this year. But that's not all. This thing, Thocs. Welcome back to the channel, guys. This is Scott K. Yes, Angry Miao has another keyboard. This time, they decided to tap into one of the most iconic, nostalgic devices ever created, the Nintendo Game Boy, and they took that and smashed it together with their own iconic keyboard, the Cyberboard. The result is a pretty wild smorgasbord of a device. But that's not all. They also decided to borrow the sound profile from another one of their keyboards, the Relic 80. The result? A wild and in-your-face Game Boy Cyberboard with Thocs to match. Let's check it out. Right off the bat, the highlight of the RGB65 is actually its design. Yes, it's created to invoke the feelings of an old classic device from my childhood, the Game Boy. Not only is this one in the similar grayish colorway, it also features many of the handheld's key design elements, like the chunky bezels, the rounded lower right hand corner with the notches, right? It was the speakers for the Game Boy. The D-pad design, the OG green LCD screen detail, and finally, the weight design to mimic the iconic device's red buttons. But wait, what is that big black thing above though? Well, that's an LED pixel matrix. Yes, from the Cyberboard. If you recall, one of the most defining features of the said keyboard is exactly this. A 200 LED matrix panel that can do many different things, like display this trippy RGB rainbow tile, or show information, right, like time, or even play some OG video game details. Show how much battery life it has left. And yes, you can also customize this to your liking as well. So Angry Miao decided to bless the Game Boy keyboard with same fantastic light show from the Cyberboard. Like most Angry Miao keyboards, this RGB65 definitely has desk presence as well. Besides the fancy lights and the Game Boy-esque styling cues, the RGB65 is also a chonker. I mean, take a look at this massive side profile. It's an 8-degree case and does a pretty good job of putting the keys at the right angles, and the nice curves do a pretty good job once again making this otherwise weighty keyboard much more approachable looking. So it looks good, right? But can it type? It sure can. The RGB65 borrows the same soft leaf spring mount from the previous Angry Miao keyboards. And look, it does provide quite the bounce when typing. What is interesting though is that the center of the keyboard, it felt a lot more stable, and as you kind of move out to the edges, it does have more movement. Not sure if that was intentional, but it does do that, so just letting you guys know. But before we move on to the details of the keyboard, let's go to a quick word from our sponsor today, PCBWay. PCBWay is an online service that helps you print PCBs, do 3D printing, or even CNC machining. If you're an aspiring keyboard designer or whatever else designer, you can take your design and simply upload it to get something made quick. Or, if you have the source code for a PCB that you already have and you need a replacement, you can also get that done as well. They can handle all types of PCBs from your simple single-layer designs to multi-layer stacks. Beyond PCBs, if you want to try making your own case, PCBWay can machine that as well. Now, a very exciting new service that PCBWay offers, OEM. Instead of just making a single component, you can actually task PCBWay to be an OEM manufacturer and make the whole thing. They can do anything from PCBs to CNC cases to even assembly. And using global manufacturing, they can offer very competitive prices. Is there a keyboard on the horizon? Well, check out OEM at PCBWay. Moving on to the components, the RGB65 is a fully built keyboard, which means it comes with everything ready to go right out of the box. Like for example, the keycaps. They're very nice and thick, cherry profile PBT die-sub keycaps. It has some nice color details such as this as well. Once you remove the keycaps, you can see the switches below. The switches are actually the new IC Silver Pro V2s. So the original V1s were very smooth linears, right? But the V2s have been updated with a different nylon housing this time, with more emphasis on the lower Thockiest tones. That makes sense. If you remove the switches, you can start to see some of the further details as well, Like the plate. Angry Miao decided to use some flex cuts on the palm plate for the RGB65. And you can also see the PE sheet below as well. Well, there's even a PET film under the PE sheet for additional sound modification. So they really wanted to mod this thing. Let's disassemble this, shall we? So whenever I take apart an Angry Miao board, I'm always astounded by the engineering and quality of the internals, right? The details don't stop on the outside. Like everything is inside, it's like housed like this. And when you take everything apart, you also see a lot of quality components as well. Like the battery. This thing actually has a massive 10,000 milliamp hour worth of batteries. You can't skip over the red center weight, which is right there in the center, and that's actually what the button detail is, right, from the outside. So, remember the leaf spring mount? Yep, this has that. And as expected, the soft feeling and like the bounciness, it comes from this type of mount. Furthermore, not only do you have the option of changing the leaves themselves out, right? The stainless silver ones, they're a little bit stiffer, and the black ones are a little bit softer. So you can adjust like, the feeling of it, but it doesn't just stop there. You can also adjust the location of the rubber bumps, or Angry Miao calls them gears, to adjust how much flex you want. There's that like level of micro adjustment right there. If you remove the plate and PCB assembly, you can see the sandwich of stuff that's going on right now. Got that palm plate, the thick pour-on plate foam, some sound modifier sheets, the 1.2mm thin PCB. It doesn't end there. Below the PCB, you can also see the under PCB foam. But wait, it's actually glued on. So this is actually like a built-in tape mount right now. All of this is starting to make sense why the RGB65 is so thocky. It's crazy modded. As you'd expect, the PCB is also loaded with per-key RGB, as well as Gate-Around hot swap sockets in south-facing configuration. I don't know, I had some issues with KL1, so I'm glad to see the Gate-Around ones here. As you saw before, under everything is a thin pour-on case foam to complete the overall foam stack. So you heard a quick preview of the RGB65 earlier on, but how about a full-on typing test? So I know that the Relic 80 was supposed to be the sound-focused keyboard from Angry Miao, but honestly, I think the RGB65 is the best sounding Angry Miao board so far. It's got that deep, thocky, creamy sound that you'd expect from these components, honestly, as well as the marble galore from like all the foam. I know some people may not like that and some people might like it, but it is what it is, right? You could always take it out if you want to. You can't really deny that this thing thocks though, right? Because it does. As you expect from Angry Miao, the RGB65 also features wireless in Bluetooth as well as 2.4 GHz. If you do decide to use a 2.4 GHz, you do have this little dongle right here. The interesting thing, this is what I believe, is that the RGB65 may be the only Angry Miao board that is not capable of wireless Qi charging, because it has like the red button weight right in the center. But honestly, I'm not sure how many people actually use the wireless Qi charging pad with the Angry Miao keyboards, but I think that the red buttons were absolutely necessary for this keyboard design, so that's a great trade-off. So, another Angry Miao board. What is my final thought then? Well, I think I own pretty much every Angry Miao board that has been released so far. What is interesting about them is that usually they focus on like one major area. Like for example, the Cyberboard, its design and that crazy light panel, right? It's the appearance, but it's not like the very best in terms of typing in my opinion. The Relic, it's focused on sound, but it does look pretty plain Jane. The AFA, yeah, that one's just crazy. The AM65 less, in my opinion, it's probably the most soft, best typing Angry Miao keyboard. What is interesting is that the RGB65 feels like the final culmination of all the Angry Miao boards of the past. And in my opinion, it's the most well-rounded package. It sounds great, it feels great, it has the design chops. It also has a lot of tech. Apparently, it took Angry Miao like 3 years to finalize this thing, and I see why. Out of all the Angry Miao boards I've experienced, I would actually say easily this is my favorite one. The Angry Miao RGB65 will launch on Kickstarter in July, and it'll come not in just this classic Nintendo colorway, but in a lot of different fun and like crazy ones too. And knowing Angry Miao, I'm sure it won't come cheap at all, but you will definitely be getting a high quality keyboard nonetheless. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll have more content for you in the future. Thanks.